When my daughter stood on my porch a month after her wedding, crying and begging to come inside my beach cottage on Sullivan's Island, I realized something I had never allowed myself to fully see. Ilara Blake, the child I had carried for 9 months and raised for over 3 decades, was only capable of loving me when it benefited her. She clung to her husband, Colton Reeves, her voice trembling as she pleaded, "Mom, please. We have nowhere else to go." I didn't argue. I didn't lecture. I simply closed the door. The sound of that latch clicking shut echoed through me long after I turned away. And as I stood in the quiet warmth of the cottage, a memory surfaced the moment everything cracked open. It had been the morning before I thought Ilara would walk down the aisle. I stood outside her townhouse in Charleston, holding a neatly wrapped gift and wearing the pale blue dress she once said made me look elegant. My heart felt light. I had raised her alone after my divorce from Dennis Blake. And despite every difficulty, I believed we were finally entering a new, more peaceful chapter. When Ilara opened the door, she barely glanced at the box in my hands. Her expression was flat, composed in that polished way she always used around her wealthier friends. "Mom, why are you here?" she asked. "I just wanted to tell you how excited I am for tomorrow," I said. "Your dress, the vows, everything, you're going to be beautiful." Her lips tightened. "Mom," she said, "the wedding was last week." I felt the words before I understood them, as if someone had placed an icy hand around my throat. "Last week." She didn't flinch. She didn't soften. She only lifted her chin like this was an inconvenience. "We kept it small. It was just easier that way." And standing in her doorway, I saw the truth settle behind her eyes. She wasn't sorry, she was satisfied. That was the moment something inside me began to shift. Small and quiet, but irreversible. Something I would only understand fully much later. I used to believe raising a child meant you held them through every storm, no matter the weight. Looking back now, I see how often that weight was mine alone. Ilara was still in college when the first cracks appeared. I remember sitting at my kitchen table as she paced around her dorm room on the phone, panicked about another tuition shortfall. "Mom, they're saying I can't enroll unless the balance is cleared," she said. "How much is it?" I asked. $3,400, she whispered. Like the number somehow embarrassed her. I transferred it the same day. She didn't say thank you. She only said, "This is why I don't tell you things. You make everything feel dramatic." When she went to design school in Atlanta, the calls came more frequently. A lost deposit, a ruined sample board, a project she failed because a classmate sabotaged her. I covered each expense, never questioning, never hesitating. By the time she launched her first interior design business in Charleston, I thought she'd learned resilience. Instead, she learned that I would always fix what she broke. When her opening event fell apart at the last minute, she called me crying. The floral vendor backed out. "I need help." I paid for new arrangements, catering, and even the photographer she insisted would make her look like she belonged. And then came the engagement. For months, I footed every bill she slipped my way. Decorations for the party, the bridal shower venue, the $2,000 she needed to secure the Charleston townhouse. She never asked politely. She delivered her needs like facts I was expected to solve. Yet when the parties happened, she positioned me in corners, introduced me as my mom from out of town, as if I were a distant relative she barely knew. The worst moment came from a neighbor, Mrs. Alden, who smiled sweetly and said, "Shame you missed the engagement brunch." "Marion, it was lovely." I remember standing there frozen. "I wasn't invited," I said. Her eyebrows lifted. "Oh, I assumed you chose not to go." That assumption lingered in me longer than it should have. It hinted at a truth I had refused to name for years. I was sitting at my kitchen table when my phone rang, the screen lighting up with the name of my niece. Claudia Serrano. She rarely called without texting first, and the tremble in her first breath told me something was wrong long before she spoke. Aunt Marian, I should have told you sooner, she said. I tried to steady my voice, told me what Claudia hesitated, and in that hesitation I felt the bottom of something inside me shift. It wasn't an accident. She finally said, "You missing the wedding. It wasn't a miscommunication or a mix-up." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Claudia, just say it," she exhaled shakily. Ilara made the decision. The wedding planner suggested keeping the vibe clean and modern, and Ilara said, "You didn't suit the aesthetic." I closed my eyes. That word aesthetic came from a world I had spent my whole life working to give her access to. Claudia kept going, her voice low, almost apologetic. She said she didn't want you pulling attention or making the groom's family uncomfortable. Something about your accent and the way Charleston society can be judgmental. She was afraid you'd embarrass her. The words settled in my chest like wet sand. It wasn't enough that she excluded me, she justified it. But Claudia wasn't done. I overheard something else at the rehearsal dinner. She whispered. She was with her bridesmaids. Laughing, she said, "If Mom comes, it'll ruin the photos. She never matches anything." They all laughed with her. The room around me went still. No movement. No sound except Claudia murmuring my name. I felt every year of my life press against me at once, every sacrifice, every dollar, every prayer whispered for my daughter's future. It wasn't a mistake. Aunt Marian, she said softly, it was intentional. They planned it. I swallowed, the taste of something bitter rising in my throat. "Thank you for telling me," I said, because I didn't know what else to say. When the call ended, I sat in the quiet kitchen, hands folded, breath unsteady. Somewhere deep inside, something that had bent for decades finally stopped bending. I drove to Ilara's townhouse with my hands trembling on the wheel, every breath sharp in my chest. I didn't call first. I couldn't. The truth Claudia had given me was still lodged in my ribs like a blade, and I needed to hear it from my daughter's mouth. When I knocked, it wasn't Ilara who answered. It was Dennis, my ex-husband, standing in the doorway like he belonged there. His hair was silver now, neatly combed the way his new wife liked it. "Marian," he said, surprised, but not in a way that suggested concern. "You should have called." "I want to speak to my daughter," I said. He hesitated, then stepped aside. "She's been under a lot of stress. Try to keep things calm." Hearing him defend her before I had even spoken sent a cold pulse through me. Ilara was on the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand. She didn't look up right away. When she did, her expression barely shifted. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I sat across from her. "You lied to me." I said, "You planned your wedding. You planned the guest list, and you deliberately kept me out." Her jaw tightened. "I wanted a clean guest list." "The wedding wasn't about you. It was about me and Colton." Dennis nodded, as if this were reasonable. "Your mother tends to, I cut him off." Do not finish that sentence. Ilara leaned forward. "Mom, you make things emotional. Everything turns into a scene with you. I just wanted a simple day without your own mother." My voice cracked. Not from anger, but from something deeper. Colton stepped out from the kitchen then, drying his hands on a towel. His eyes flicked between us. "Maybe it's best if we're honest," he said quietly. "Your father told Ilara that you might not fit in with his new wife's circle. He thought it would spare everyone discomfort." Dennis didn't deny it. He only looked away. The air inside that townhouse felt heavy, suffocating. 3 people I loved, each of them had played a part. I stood, no yelling, no tears. Just the kind of finality that comes when a person stops pretending. And as I walked out, one thing settled into place with painful precision. They had erased me together. I drove back to Sullivan's Island with a heaviness that clung to me like damp air. The cottage my late husband, Daniel, had loved so dearly sat quiet and familiar, its soft creaks greeting me as I stepped inside. It was the one place untouched by Ilara's need for appearances, the one space that had always been mine. I set my purse on the kitchen table and reached for the old lockbox I kept tucked beneath the sink. Dust coated the lid, proof of how long it had been since I'd needed to look inside. I opened it slowly, searching for something solid proof that I still had control of one corner of my life. The deed sat on top, crisp and clear despite the years. My name, and only my name, written beside the words, legal owner. Daniel had insisted it be mine after he was diagnosed, calling it his way of making sure I was never left unprotected. I whispered, "Thank you," to a man who was no longer here to hear it. As I reviewed the paperwork, something else caught my attention, a stack of utility statements forwarded from the management company. The charges were much higher than usual. I sifted through them, frowning as I saw irregular spikes, almost like... I picked up my phone and called the number printed on the bottom. "Can you tell me why the water usage was so high last month?" I asked. The representative hesitated. "It appears the property hosted guests multiple weekends, listed as short-term rentals." My breath faltered. Rentals, my house. I walked outside to clear my head, but before I reached the porch steps, my neighbor, Helen, waved from her yard. "Marion, the pre-wedding photo shoot at your place was lovely. I saw the setup from my window. Your daughter looked beautiful." The words hit harder than they should have. Ilara had used my home, my memories, as a backdrop she could profit from and claim as her own. I stood there in the fading light, the truth settling with an unforgiving weight. Even my sanctuary had been repurposed into a trophy she could parade around without ever acknowledging where it came from. Linda Carter had always been direct, and that was exactly why I called her. When I walked into her office in downtown Charleston, she motioned for me to sit, her expression sharpening the moment she saw the folder in my hands. "You brought documents," she said. "That usually means someone pushed you too far." I set the folder on her desk. "My daughter used my beach house for rentals. She never asked, and she's been telling people it's family property." Linda opened the folder carefully. "These utility spikes match short-term rental patterns," she said. "And these forwarding statements show income went somewhere. I'm guessing not to you." "No," I said. "She profited from it." Linda nodded once, then took out a notepad. "We'll start with formal restrictions preventing her from entering or using the property. And we'll send notices to the rental platforms to flag unauthorized listings." I breathed out slowly. "There's more, Linda. Unpaid taxes that I covered for years because Ilara kept insisting she'd pay me back when she made it." She wrote faster. "We'll separate all financial ties. Do you still share any accounts with her?" I hesitated before answering. "There's an old joint emergency account. I kept it open in case she needed help." Linda's pen stopped. "Do you want to keep it?" "No," I said. The word quiet but steady. "Close it. Freeze access. All of it." She nodded approvingly. "I'll handle the paperwork today." Before I could gather my things, she added, "There's something else in these statements. Multiple credit checks tied to your savings account. Someone used it as proof of funds." I felt something twist inside me. "Colton," I said softly. "He must have used my account to impress clients." Linda's jaw tightened. "That is a serious breach. We'll put safeguards immediately." As she drafted the documents, I sat still, hands folded, feeling the shift inside me. For the first time in decades, I wasn't cleaning up after anyone. I was severing the strings that tied me to people who only pulled when they wanted something. It started with a voicemail from one of Ilara's former clients, A woman named Lydia Hartwell. Her tone was clipped, almost shaking with irritation. Ms. Blake, I thought you should know. Your daughter used your beach house in her portfolio. She told me it belonged to her. I found out it does not. I will not be moving forward with the $30,000 contract. I listened to it twice. Not out of shock, but because of how familiar the pattern felt. Ilara taking something of mine, polishing it, and pretending it was hers. 2 days later, Claudia called. Aunt Marion, have you heard Colton's firm cut him from a partnership track? They found out he used your account as proof of funds. They said it violates ethics. I sat down slowly. Did he say anything? He told people it was a misunderstanding, she said. But everyone knows. The fall spread quickly quiet conversations in Charleston coffee shops. Sharp whispers in social groups Ilara used to cling to so desperately. Dennis showed up at my cottage that weekend, wearing a tense smile I hadn't seen since our divorce. Marion, we need to talk, he said, stepping inside before I invited him. Ilara is drowning. Just help her this once. This once, I said. Dennis, I've spent decades helping her. He rubbed his forehead. People are talking. They think you're abandoning your own daughter. It reflects badly on all of us. There it was, the truth behind his sudden concern. Not love, not guilt, reputation. I'm not responsible for your image, I said, or hers. His expression hardened. You're being cruel. No, I said quietly. I'm finally being honest. Community gossip rose around me, framing me as the cold mother who refused to lift her child. But Claudia wasn't having it. She confronted people directly, telling them exactly how many years I had carried Ilara's debts, her failures, her ambitions. The whispers softened after that, replaced with unease and then with curiosity. People were beginning to see the cracks, and beneath those cracks was the beginning of desperation. Claudia called just after sunset, her voice tight in a way that made my stomach knot. Aunt Marion, I need you to check your messages, she said. I'm sending you something. Please sit down before you watch it. I opened the message the moment we hung up. A single video file waited on the screen, the thumbnail showing a crowded table lit by warm restaurant lights. I pressed play. Ilara stood at the head of the rehearsal dinner, a champagne flute raised in her hand. Her dress shimmered, her smile wide and polished. To all of you, she said. Thank you for being here for this special weekend. Someone off camera shouted, What about your mom? Is she coming tomorrow? Ilara's smile twisted into something sharper. Thank goodness my mom isn't coming, she said, lifting her glass higher. I wanted elegance, not complications. A wave of laughter rippled across the table. Bridesmaids leaned into each other, giggling. The groom grinned, and then the camera panned slightly, revealing Dennis at the far end of the table. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't uncomfortable. He was laughing like he agreed. The video ended with Ilara dabbing her eyes, still laughing, as if bullying her mother was a charming little joke. My phone felt heavy in my hand. For a long moment, I sat in silence, the air around me thick and unmoving. Every denial I had told myself, every excuse meant to soften her choices dissolved. This wasn't insecurity. This wasn't pressure from society. This wasn't a mistake. This was how she spoke about me when I wasn't there. This was who she chose to be. Claudia called again. You saw it. Yes, I said, my voice steady. I saw exactly what I needed to see. There was no trembling inside me anymore. No confusion. No guilt. Just a clean, sharp line drawn through my chest, a line that would not be crossed again. The knock came just after 9, sharp enough to cut through the quiet of the cottage. I knew that rhythm before I even reached the door. When I opened it, the porch light fell across Ilara's face. Streaked with tears and smeared makeup, Colton hovered behind her, pale and exhausted, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Mom," Alara choked out, her voice already shaking. "Please, please let us in." I stayed in the doorway, the frame solid at my back. "Why are you here?" "Our lease ended," she said quickly. "It was sudden. The landlord wouldn't renew because of the rumors." Colton stepped forward. Clients pulled away. He added, "People talk in Charleston. Someone spread lies about us." I didn't respond. Alara grabbed his arm, then looked at me again. "Mom." Everything fell apart at once. The contract Lydia canceled. Then another client backed out. The bank froze one of our accounts because of the proof of funds issue. She swallowed hard. "We just need somewhere to stay. Just for a little while. Until things get better." I could hear the rehearsed desperation, the selective truths. She told me about circumstances, but never about choices. "Mom, I'm begging you," she whispered. "I know I hurt you. I know. But please don't let us be homeless." For a moment, the instinct I had carried for 7 decades tried to push forward the instinct to rescue, to soften, to make pain easier. But it faded as quickly as it came. I stepped out just enough for her to see my face clearly. "You planned a life without me," I said softly. "Now you can live it." Her mouth fell open. She reached out, but I had already stepped back. I closed the door with the same quiet finality I had used a month earlier. Hours later, Dennis called. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask if I was safe. He only snarled, "You should have helped them. Do you know how this makes us look?" I ended the call and set the phone down, letting the silence settle around me like a long overdue truth. The morning after Alara stood crying on my porch, I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of documents spread in front of me. No trembling, no hesitation. I opened my laptop and began sending every deed, every tax record, every legal paper connected to the Sullivan's Island cottage to the rental platforms she had used. I attached a short message. "This property has been listed fraudulently. The legal owner is me, Marion Blake." Then I forwarded the same documents to the clients Alara had pitched to over the past year. Every person she had tried to impress using my home as her backdrop. I wrote nothing more than the truth. And the truth was enough. By the 3rd day, Claudia called. "Aunt Marion," she said, "the platforms removed every listing, and people are talking. They're saying Alara misrepresented herself. I didn't celebrate." I only said, "Good." 2 days later, the city sent Alara a letter. Fines for unregistered commercial activity, penalties for unauthorized rentals. Colton's company released a public statement distancing themselves from his private conduct. The clean, curated image they had built collapsed under the weight of their own choices. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from Alara. "Mom, I do not know how to fix my life." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I typed back, "Start by fixing yourself." I blocked her number before she could reply. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt steady, as if something inside me had finally clicked back into place. The next morning, I walked out onto the porch, the sky just beginning to warm with sunrise. Claudia was coming by later with coffee. Linda had promised to stop in after her court hearing, for the first time in years. I wasn't bracing myself for anyone's needs. I was simply living. If you've ever carried someone who refused to carry you back, tell me your story in the comments, and consider liking or subscribing for more. The waves rolled in softly, and I breathed in a future that finally belonged to me.